It's interesting, we start talking here about digital comms and that type of security with everything that's going on at this exact moment in time with all these Epstein files. And there's a big conversation, because now we can see 3 million documents, and many of them are emails that people have sent at different times. Some of the most famous people in the world have sent emails to Epstein, and now those are all out there in the public to see. I wondered what your take was on all of this stuff. You must be watching this stuff from through the lens that you've built your career. And you must have an interesting opinion.
Some of it I don't talk about because I have a fair amount of inside information, and I'm just watchful about not getting near the line.
What do you mean by inside information?
I mean information that I might have gotten from, I'm characterizing it carefully, that I might have gotten from government agencies that are clients, or that I might have gotten because clients were implicated. Like I learned today, for example, this morning on the way over here, that I'm in the Epstein files.
Oh, really?
And here's the way I'm in there, is that someone sent Epstein an article that I wrote called Fooling Ourselves into War. And so somebody sent that article, which is an article I really like, by the way, published in Huffington Post at the time. And they sent that to Epstein. So that's an example of being in the Epstein files and yet obviously never having met Epstein. But I have a few clients who, and friends, who the Epstein group made approaches on and failed, meaning they tried to get them and failed. I'll give you one story without naming the person, of course. He goes to meet with Epstein in New York to ask for money for a charity. And Epstein is perceived as this big billionaire, which he was not, by the way, I'll tell you in a second. And Epstein is in a robe, and they're across the desk just like you and I are. And Epstein says, hey, they're finishing the meeting. He says, hey, I'm going to get a massage, hence my robe. You want to get a massage? And through the hallway, my friend can see a massage table and a room and a very cute girl who's the massage therapist, right, dressed like a massage therapist. And so he happened to say no. In fact, interestingly, he happens to not like massage, which is itself, a lot of people would say yes and might even think it would improve my relationship with this guy, Jeffrey Epstein, who I perceive as this rich guy that I'm trying to get money from my charity. Had that happened, what a different world for that person. What a different life. Because in that room is cameras and then eventually audio. It didn't start off with audio, but audio was added later. And then you're getting a hand job, if I'm allowed to say hand job, from somebody who you don't even think about their age, but turns out to be 17. And you are in a world of trouble for the rest of your life. And that's a big piece of what was going on with Epstein, with cameras in that apartment in New York, and eventually audio, cameras and eventually audio at the island. My take on it, and certainly my public take, is that there was a profound blackmail operation going on to the benefit of probably more than one government, but at least one government. And when I said a moment ago he wasn't a billionaire, he wasn't a billionaire. For one thing, his earning path is highly suspect. I'll first tell you what he was. What he was is a construct. He's a created construct. Money, wealth, private jet, private island, fun, not married, young girls, lots of things. So he was a construct. The money, $500 million of money came from Les Wexner, who's a wealthy guy who owns or owned, I don't know what he's doing now, Victoria's Secret, big donator to the state of Israel. And $500 million was transferred to Epstein along with power of attorney to use it and invest it in the ways he saw fit. Quite an unusual, I'm mildly wealthy, but I'm not sending you $500 million, I'll tell you that. The idea that you're doing this is itself extraordinary, but it was probably the funding mechanism for this construct. While it's a real name, Jeffrey Epstein, and he has a real birth certificate and grew up in a real way, the picture that is presented to the world is not authentic. It is not accurate to who he was. And the more you dig into this story, which of course people are doing so much now because of these 3 million documents so far, and videos, by the way, and photographs, there's a lot of material there. It's very interesting to people right now, and more to be learned. But what was actually going on? Why in the world would anybody say, well, there are national security implications to some of this content? That's why some things are redacted. What would that be? Why would the prosecutor who prosecuted him in Florida and provided one of the most unusual plea bargain deals in world history, and certainly unique in American history, which is, imagine I'm a U.S. attorney, I've got you on some crime, and you say, okay, I'm going to plead guilty, I'm going to serve my time, but please let my accountant go, and please don't prosecute my wife, because all she did was deliver the stuff, and she wasn't involved in anything. And so those are called unindicted co-conspirators. So I make a deal with you, and I say, okay, you go to jail for the 8 months, and we will leave the unindicted co-conspirators unindicted. We won't prosecute your wife, your son, your accountant, or what have you. That's a very normal process. It's a bargaining process, basically. However, in the Epstein case, the U.S. attorney gave him a deal that said that we would not prosecute unnamed co-conspirators. Holy shit, who's that? Who's unnamed co-conspirators? Unnamed co-conspirators could be 50 people. It could be 75 people. The guy who gave that sweetheart deal became the Secretary of Labor. He was at that time the U.S. Attorney for Florida. He was asked, why did you give that sweetheart deal? Because the deal's ridiculous. Unnamed co-conspirators will be exempt from prosecution. And he said, I was told he belonged to intelligence. And then he had to resign because of this. There was a lot going on with Epstein, the person who, there's so much of this, but the person who sort of brought Epstein into the world of power and got him his job at, I think, Morgan Stanley, I could have that wrong, but one of those big finance companies, was William Barr's father. William Barr was the Attorney General, who was the U.S. Attorney General when Epstein was killed or died in prison, depending on your choice of reality. So there's so much there, but I won't be the first guest, Stephen, that you've had that says that it was an intelligence operation. Why the U.S. government is reluctant to be more transparent, some of it is national security, some of it is, let's imagine an ally of ours is involved in that operation. So there's a reluctance, and there's a question, it's a little bit like UFOs, could the public handle it, is the question that's always asked in these cases. Meaning, could the public handle it if, for example, the UK was running an intelligence operation inside the United States to control senators and congressmen and powerful executives and powerful figures and scientists? Could we handle it? Could the U.S. public handle it? My take personally, absolutely yes.
So you believe that he was an intelligence asset, and it sounds like you believe he was an intelligence asset potentially by a U.S. ally.
Yes.
So who is that ally?
Israel.
You believe that Epstein was an Israel intelligence asset?
Yes, I do. And Ghislaine Maxwell, just for additional background, but everybody can find it, her father was an Israeli intelligence asset who was so revered. His funeral ceremony was held in Israel, was attended by the prime minister, by I think the last 4 or 5, by every living head of Mossad attended. And there were words used in eulogies like he did things for Israel that the world will never know about. There's a lot of good connection there and a lot of good connective tissue, some of which I've shared with you because it's public and some of which I'm not sharing. But that is indeed what I believe, yes. And not just me, by the way. You might already be there, and you've certainly had another guest sit here and former CIA guy, Kirikow, how do you say his last name?
Yeah.
Am I close to how
You're
you say
close. It's closer than I would get.
Okay, good. And he was point blank in saying Israel.
So there's no direct evidence, but what people are essentially doing is putting the pieces together to make a picture.
There is direct evidence. There's just not direct evidence I'm sharing at this moment. But there's plenty of evidence that has been public already, some of which I've shared. I mean, I could do it for 40 minutes, but everybody can just go to ChatGPT. And, if you ask ChatGPT, make the best case for, it's a good thing for viewers to remember, make the best case for ... whatever it is. If you ask, the first answer you get if you ask a straight question will always be the official narrative.
I've done exactly that,
right.
As you said it. I asked ChatGPT, make the best case for Epstein being an Israel spy. Here is what it said. The case that Jeffrey Epstein functioned as an Israeli intelligence asset rests on a pattern alignment rather than direct proof. He ran a sexual compromise operation resembling known intelligence Compromat tradecraft.
Compromat, yeah, like it's a Russian word that means we compromise you.
Had wealth and access far beyond his formal career and operated with unusual legal protection for years. His close partnership with Ghislaine Maxwell, whose father had documented intelligence ties, fuels suspicion, as does reporting by journalists who say Epstein's activities were discussed in intelligence-adjacent circles. The cameras and the microphones hidden in his apartment and his home. How do we know they were there and why?
Well, how I know they were there is a little bit different from how everybody knows they were there. And I don't know enough about the entire history of the FBI piece, but I'll tell you a funny part of the FBI piece. When they went to execute a search warrant at that apartment after his more recent arrest, they found and even photographed a bunch of CD-ROMs or discs of some kind that were labeled, but they didn't take them. They said, we'll get a warrant and we'll be back for those. And they came back after a mere 6 days, and it was all gone. So where it is, I don't know. Does the U.S. government have it? Does somebody else have it? I just don't know the answer. But I know from very direct information regarding the island and the apartment. I don't know about New Mexico. I just don't happen to know, another house that he owned, that there were cameras and then eventually audio. Audio was added. Oh, also testimony, by the way, testimony from girls who worked there and visited there a lot, who said that in a small room to the right of the front door was a whole thing of videos where the recording was done.
And can you explain to me why recording videos and audio of people getting those kinds of, doing those kinds of things would be a useful asset for this foreign adversary to have?
Sure. Blackmail is not always done by calling you up and saying, hey, Stephen, I'm going to hurt you in the following way if you don't do A, B, or C. The other version is far better, which is even alluded to in some of the now released material, which is he calls and he says, Stephen, I've got terrible news. Do you remember you had that massage from Cindy? You know, that girl, Cindy? Oh, yeah, I remember. Well, she recorded something. She had something in her bag. She made a recording. And I got worse news, Stephen. The girl's 16 and a half. And now, by the way, you are stomach drops, diarrhea. You are in a world of stress right now, just hearing that. And he, instead of being your blackmailer, becomes your rescuer. He says, I can handle it. She's got the recordings. I don't know where they are, but I can handle it. Don't worry. And he owns you now forever. If you were involved in a naked experience with someone who's underage, and there's a video of it and audio of it as well, you will do anything that you are asked to do that is within reason. Very few people would have the character and the stamina to do what you describe Bezos doing, which is that he wrote a public letter saying a very unusual thing happened to me the other day. I'm being blackmailed by the National Enquirer, and here's what they said. That's very, very rare. And so, a senator, a congressman, he owned a lot of people. Do you have any skepticism about that?
I don't have skepticism. I just have a lot of ignorance to how this whole world works.
Lucky you.
And I just have a lot of ignorance to because you hear about these things in almost like movies. And it appears that we're all kind of witnessing something we might have regulated just to the movies happen before our eyes. And even when, I saw some of the emails coming up on my feed of things that Epstein had emailed people, he seemed to be continually inviting people to hang out with him.
Sure.
In a way that is quite atypical. Now, maybe I'm just an introvert, but I'm not. He was aggressive in his comms to people saying, come and hang out with me. I'm doing this thing at this dinner party. Come to my island. Are you in the area? And he was succeeding in getting a lot of people to come and visit his homes in his island. And yeah, it's...
By the way, Stephen, in the circumstance you are in today, you might well have heard from Jeffrey Epstein. You might well have had somebody who knows you, who says, hey, there's this guy in New York, loves your show, just terrific. And all of a sudden, you're getting that invitation. And you're getting that invitation through someone you know and kind of like.
Like Joe Rogan did.
I don't know, but like so many people.
Well, and Joe Rogan said it.
Oh, if he's been public about it, I'm just not going to be the one to say it, but I got it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Joe Rogan publicly last week said that, and it's in the files, that a former guest, I think it was Lawrence Krauss, of his show, invited him to come and meet Jeffrey Epstein. And the emails show that Jeffrey Epstein was trying to get Lawrence to bring Joe Rogan in. Joe Rogan said, absolutely, well, this is what Joe Rogan's word said, absolutely fucking not.
Right.
I was creeped out about it and never went and was never involved at all.
The point I was just making is that in your present circumstance with the enormous audience and the reach of this show and all your work, the small videos, et cetera, of course you're a terrific person, because now I can call you up and say, hey, will you have this person on? Or I can say, hey, will you be really skeptical about this topic? And will you say, I don't believe it? And will you say, I think it's wrong? Or will you say, I think it's anti-Semitism? Or will you say such and such? And brother, you will.
The moment where I started to, really understand the blackmail angle was when I started reading some of the particular emails that Epstein had sent to himself. One in particular where he sent himself an email regarding Bill Gates. He's alleging that Bill Gates has slept with, he's sending himself an email.
Yes.
Alleging that Bill Gates has slept with someone, some Russian prostitute, and that he got an STD, an extramarital affair, all of these allegations. And when I read that email, then I thought, he was a blackmailer. He was definitely a blackmailer. And he's collected all these rich and famous people and he has them in his pocket now. Just to close off then on this point of Epstein before we move on, you said they've released some of the files and you said they hadn't released other files.
Yes.
And you implied that was because they basically can't release these other files necessarily.
Well, I don't know what, I think more is coming. I think more will be released, but there are certainly files, including files even right now, even yesterday. Though there's a law, as you may know, Congress voted for a law to release everything unredacted, there's still a lot of redacted stuff. So there's more to come, and will some be redacted? Sure. Is anybody going to sit here like I did today and say, hi, I'm the secretary of blah, 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 and let me just tell you what was really going on? I'm the head of the CIA, and let me tell you what was really going on? Not likely.
But Trump knows. He knows who Jeffrey Epstein really was.
I would say all senior people in the U.S. government and many, many people in general know everything that you and I have discussed here today. No secret. By the way, what do you think? Let's imagine somebody came forward and said, this country described as our greatest ally. I would say our greatest ally is the UK, based on history. But Israel's an important ally in the Middle East, and it's a democracy, and it's more of a Western government. I get it. But what do you think? The country comes out and somebody officially says, okay, let me tell you what was going on. Do you think the American public can handle it?
I think they either way now deserve to know the truth. Whether they can handle it or not is probably secondary to whether I think people need to know the truth. I think the problem is people have been partially traumatized by all of this stuff. And so now I think the remedy is full transparency.
I agree. And by the way, this is close. Because we got a lot of information, whereas 5 weeks ago or 8 weeks ago, people were saying, "Oh, there's nothing more. That's it. That's all there is." I mean, this is a big step, and I think it's a big step, as big a step toward transparency as probably as I've seen in my lifetime by a government. The exception would be, and it's not a government, what Elon did after buying Twitter, the release of the Twitter files. That was a very impressive thing, of letting 3 journalists come in and just go through everything. I think it would be awesome if the U.S. government ever, governments don't do this very often, but if they ever said, okay, everybody, put on your seatbelt. I'm going to tell you exactly what happened with the JFK assassination, or exactly what happened with the assassination of Robert F. Kennedy, Senator Robert F. Kennedy, when he ran for president. There are some examples of this in U.S. history where it feels like after about 25 years, we'll start telling the truth about something. 50 years ago, Johnson & Johnson went to the FDA and they said, look, our baby powder, that stuff that you put on the baby and you breathe and the mother breathes, well, it's got asbestos in it and it causes cancer. And the FDA said, well, thanks for bringing this to our attention. We'll begin to study how much asbestos is an allowable amount. Now, they never considered 0, which is what I'd want on my baby or you'd want on your baby. And they began to study. And then they studied for a while and they studied for a while. And lo and behold, 40 years had gone by. And they hadn't come out with a ruling to say there shouldn't be any asbestos in Johnson & Johnson baby powder. When did they come out with that ruling, by the way? Last year, end of 2024, after 52 years. So at the beginning, the government is saying, asbestos? No, what are you talking about? Agent Orange, the same story. Agent Orange is a material used in Vietnam for defoliation, hurt people, killed people, and caused birth defects in their kids, including American soldiers, lots of them. The government knew it. They had tested it on 40 lab mice. And lab mice don't have a good life generally anyway. They don't have good life expectancy. But in this case, 38 died within 5 days. What did the government do with that information? Oh, put that in a top secret file and get rid of that. And then it sits for a long, long time. And the Institute of Medicine says, Agent Orange hurting people, what are you talking about? No. And they lie and they lie and they lie. And then finally, 20, 25 years later, okay, yeah, sorry, we were wrong. It does cause birth defects. You see that same story with breast implants, silicone breast implants. You see that same story with baby formula, with baby food, which has arsenic in it. I don't want any arsenic in baby food, but deny. And we'll see it with mass vaccination. Because after some years, there will be, okay, yes, there is a good chance that it causes myocarditis, already been admitted, by the way, pericarditis, cancer in young people. It was a bad product. Sorry. But they won't do it a year away from a thing. And they're obviously, as we can see every day, they won't do it 5 years away. It's very easy to see and to locate when the U.S. government or any power center, I'm an American, I'm all for America, but all power centers in human history lie. Knowing that they are lying does not tell you the truth, however. Meaning knowing that Oswald did not act alone as a shooter from the 6th floor of the Texas Book Depository, if he was a shooter at all, knowing that does not tell you who was the shooter. So often the best we can get in our skepticism is to know that we are not being told the truth.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor. Become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.